Well, so far, so good. Hi, everybody. It's Joe Cioffi. Welcome to this Monday night edition of the Joe Cioffi Weather Show. And, Dennis Cassia is on. Yes, I know. Joe Rayo actually did a YouTube program today. I am so excited. Joe Rayo Weather on YouTube. So all of you should be liking his YouTube page as well and subscribing to it, because I think I have finally convinced him to go ahead and do live streams on YouTube, and that would be a huge, huge victory. So I'm really glad to hear that, Dennis Cassia. And welcome to my chat board, by the way. It's nice to see you here. And of course, welcome to all of my regulars. After yesterday's issue, regarding my morning live stream, Weather with Cioffi, Coffee with Cioffi, had a little problem with the internet signal. I lost it, and then I had it tethered to a hotspot, and the hotspot got thrown off by the wireless, and on it went. So unfortunately, I did manage to do it into 30 minutes before it fell apart, but I couldn't get back on. And anyway, bottom line is we're here today. So I need you at home. I also did a few things. You'll notice that this is my microphone, okay? It's actually a really good one. It's the one I've been using, but I've been complaining about the fact that Windows resets my audio levels every single time I go in and out of a program. So I was able to find, thanks to Erica Baker who watches here, I was able to find a nice little piece of software online that hopefully stops that from happening. So I just need you guys to know, while we're on a full screen and I can see the chat, that it sounds okay, that I'm not spiking, you're not hearing cracking, everything sounds good, says Timothy Veltman. Awesome to hear. That is great. And my weather in fives also sounded pretty good. So everybody here on a Monday, good to see you all after this weekend. Kind of a weird storm that formed off the southeast coast of the United States and has been just kind of creeping its way northward. It took a bit more of an east route and went out further offshore. It also, when you look at it on the satellite, in spite of the fact that at times it had this kind of impressive look to it, it also, there were a lot of things that were really wrong with it and very disorganized, particularly this morning, when I noticed that there was a what looked like a separated low-level circulation and a mid and upper-level circulation that was literally sitting to the northeast of where the low-level circulation was. And this was in no way a tropical system. It was a cold core system. But nonetheless, it had a very, very disorganized look to it. You have this complication with this other trough that is swinging out of the Midwest now. So acting more as a kicker to it rather than kind of injecting a little extra energy. So the bottom line was that in terms of the weather we've seen from this, it was decidedly underwhelming in the Northeast and in the northern mid-Atlantic states. Now, there were considerable coastal flooding issues in the Outer Banks of the Carolinas. There were some heavy rain issues there down along the Carolina coast, at least for a while. And that has subsided. That also probably wound up finishing, at least in terms of the rainfall. The coastal flooding kind of played out well. But in terms of the rainfall I thought wound up being probably a lot less than what the models were forecasting. So quick hello to Mac Attack and Weather Lady, Chris Alley, Chuck Cardillo, Weather Enlow, who for some reason you're informing me of YouTube changes for next year to be aware. Yeah, I know all about it. It's got nothing to do with me. I do weather videos here. So, and there's new rules regarding, to make sure that your live streams are safe for kids, or, you have to kind of indicate what you're doing here. So I don't even know how to answer that question, because I do a highly technical weather show. So I don't think this qualifies as children's programming. But nonetheless, I already know about it. But thank you very much for re-informing me about the new rule changes. So we've got a very interesting week ahead, and a big hello to everybody else whose name I have not mentioned. So we got a lot of weather going on, as we always do. Looks like the action is going to shift a bit to the west later this week. We've got a split flow and some energy dropping into Southern California for a change. So it looks like we're going to see some weather in Southern California and into Arizona and New Mexico, rather than seeing it perhaps in areas much further to the north. There's a separate northern stream to all of this that is moving through. And at the same time, here in the east, it looks like as this storm pulls out, things are going to calm down a little bit. By the way, for those of you who have questions, just remember, as soon as I'm done with the live stream, I can't see the chat board while we're live streaming. And I would normally have been monitoring the chat board on my phone, but right now I'm monitoring to make sure that I don't get thrown off the mobile hotspot so we don't lose the live stream. So save your questions. If you put them up in the chat early, fine. But as soon as I'm done, if you do have a question, throw it back on at that point, because then I will be able to see it and then I can respond to it. So let's get started here tonight. Why don't we bring up the surface map? We're going to start with that and take a look at what's happening right at this moment at 7 o'clock Eastern time. And the winter weather advisories are still up for upstate New York and for parts of Maine. There'll probably be some additional ones that'll go up during the appropriate, once they hit the hour that they have it set for, be it midnight or first thing tomorrow morning. But I just kind of look at this and everything that's gone on so far and what's on the radar. And I have to tell you, I'm just really very much underwhelmed by it all. It just doesn't seem like this is going to really do anything of consequence. And certainly for the folks up in the areas where we have advisories, I don't think it's going to be anything that's going to cause you any kind of issue with respect to getting around. I mean, you've seen far worse over the years, and you managed to get through that because, hey, it's wintertime. It's Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. Guess what? It snows. There's a shocker. Also, sometimes you get sleet and freezing rain. Another shocker. So I think it's all pretty much manageable. And of course, there were advisories up for areas further south last night and this morning, but the precip never really showed up. But there was some spotty light rain or drizzle, maybe produced a few icy spots, nothing that I really heard of. And other than that, it was done. So the one thing that kind of stood out today was the fact that the temperatures really just went absolutely nowhere. We stayed pretty much in the upper 30s and low 40s, and now we've actually had a bit of a wind shift where the winds have gone around to the northwest because the surface low is passing southeast of Cape Cod, and you can see the buoys that are out here, 5250, temperature dew point at buoy 44008 with a northerly wind at 25, gusting to 38, and buoy 44018. Why are there the same numbers for both of them? Oh, one is 008 and the other one is 018. And they are north at 29, gusting to 38 miles an hour. And we've got a buoy well off the coast of Maine, 44005, which is 36 from the northeast, north-northeast, gusting to 45 miles an hour. And we're seeing some gusts up into the low 30s on Cape Cod. Provincetown Municipal Airport is north at 28, gusting to 32. So, the winds have really slackened off considerably down across the coasts of Long Island and down through New Jersey and points southward. Not really seeing anything excessive in terms of wind gusts now, not even back to 20 miles an hour in terms of gusts. But you can see the chilly temperatures that extend down through Virginia, North and South Carolina, and into Georgia in the 50s. By the way, Miami yesterday, because that cold air, that storm along the East Coast basically created a long flow of cold air from Maine down to Florida. And temperatures today, well, at least as of 7 o'clock, in West Palm Beach right now, it's 66. Up the coast at Titusville, it's 61. Melbourne is 63. Fort Pierce is at 57. Okay, so these are 7 o'clock temperatures. Let me see what the highs were today, because Miami yesterday broke a record, only getting back to, it was one of those, it was the lowest high temperature ever recorded, and for the date, and it was 65 for the high. So pretty impressive when you got to remember always to measure these numbers in relative terms with respect to the season. And see if I can get these high temperatures to load. I always seem to have a trouble around the 7 o'clock hour to load the high and low temperatures because that's 0Z. So I guess everything is getting reset. But yep, they're not loading for whatever. I gotta believe that that's the reason. Let's see if this works. It says max min since midnight, and even the mins aren't loading. So okay, you can't say I didn't try. So here are the watches and the warnings that are up for the U.S. at the moment. And as I said, it looks like the action is going to shift now into the Southwest. We have half the state of Arizona, more than half the state of Arizona under flash flood watches. Also, we've got flash flood watches up for parts of Southern California. Winter storm watches and warnings up in California, in the interior, up the Sierra Nevadas, and winter storm watches also peppered in there as well. Some winter storm warnings up in southwest Utah, advisories and watches that are starting to pop up now in parts of western Colorado, and in that orangish looking area from Wyoming down to New Mexico. So we have all sorts of severe weather statements that are up ahead of this system. Winter storm warnings, winter storm watches, and winter weather advisories also cover an area up into Montana. That's the northern part of the split flow. And by the way, I don't know if you can see it. Let me just recenter the picture in case you can. Oh, you can. All right. So Hawaii looks like they've got flood watches up for all of the islands, and Alaska, who we don't really pay as much attention to as we should. At least we should talk about it at night. But it looks like the southern, and remember, Alaska is a huge state. It's bigger than Texas by a very large margin. It looks like the entire southern half of Alaska is under either winter storm warnings or winter storm watches or winter weather advisories. And I'm just pulling up their particular map here. Fairbanks, winter weather advisory there, winter storm warning you go further to the west. A lot of these towns I'm very unfamiliar with, but definitely on the busy side here with respect to some of the weather that's going on. And of course, Alfred Phillips, who's from Wainwright, Alaska, would be pulling up observations down from this point. Dead Horse right now, for example, is 4 below zero. And I know snow lovers would love to see a forecast like this for anywhere in along the I-95 corridor, which is to see snow in virtually every time frame and temperatures in the single digits. I have to tell you, I can't remember what winter it was. Either it was in the January of 2009 or 2010 or 11, one of those years, where I saw heavy snow here on Long Island, where the temperatures didn't get out of the single digits just about the whole day. And I remember seeing heavy snow falling with a temperature of 6. And we wound up with about 6 inches. Some of that was Long Island sound effect that occurred, and some of it was with a weak little low that went by. But that was quite a sight to see huge flakes, very little moisture content that it took to make those really huge flakes. And it was very, very impressive indeed. But haven't seen anything quite like it since. I'd like to see it again one day, but doesn't seem to be, certainly not in the cards anytime soon. We'll see what this winter brings. But you have to have, pretty much the right connection, the right setup for something like that to occur. But in the meantime, we could always fantasize about Dead Horse. For snow lovers anyway, they can always think about Dead Horse in Alaska. Okay, so here's a look at what the Weather Service is, at least through Thursday evening, 7 p.m., so about 72 hours from now, what is being forecast out in the West. And some of the larger amounts are showing up in parts of Colorado. Denver is kind of on the edge of this, but you've got some big snows more in the southwestern part of the state, and also some big snows showing up in some of the mountainous terrain in Utah. You see a couple of 20, there's a 23 being punched up there. I don't know what elevated area this is, indicated somewhere in west-northwest of Las Vegas, but they got a 24 number there. And you see the numbers up. The Sierra Nevadas probably forecasting up to a foot or more. An inch being plotted there for Carson City, so I'm guessing Reno might wind up getting something out of this. And some snow back up and through the rest of Nevada and points northward. So busy out in the west. And we're also going to be seeing some snows up through Wyoming and Montana, although it looks like it's in the 1 to 2, 1 to 3 inch range, at least through Thursday evening, and that's with the next system. I'll show you when we get to the maps how this split flow is setting up. And it's kind of, I always like split flows from the standpoint of the challenge of trying to forecast them. And sometimes under certain circumstances, you certainly could get some rather exciting weather out of this, out of split flows. Now take a look at the satellite loop. And, I mentioned before the kind of strange nature to the weather system in the east. And, your surface low is not drawing. Hang on a second. Let me clean that up. There we go. So your surface low is right about here. Not sure why the color is not showing up here. Let's try this again. All right. Now, for some reason, why is the transparency? I don't want transparency. Nope. It figures. I want to go draw on the map, and it's not letting me. Now, let's exit and try this again. Erase. And, really? Okay. There we go. See, if I do things often enough, I just kind of figure it out that it needed to be at 100%. All right, so here we go. So, here's your surface low that's probably sitting just southeast of Cape Cod somewhere. But take a look at how, if you look at this carefully in terms of the northeast, take this whole area in here. You've got so much going on. There's definitely some kind of second feature that's up further to the north and east, be it either an upper low. I can't really see what's been analyzed at the surface, but there's some energy that's up in here that has moved away from where the surface low, and you're seeing actually a little bit of development of some showers and storms offshore with that particular low. Then, as you go out to the west, you got an upper trough that is swinging around. So this was really an instance where you just had too many broken pieces in the upper atmosphere at play. The upper trough out to the west, if it was a little bit further to the east, a bit further along, where it would have caught this developing coastal low, it would have been a whole different ball game here along the east coast. And by the way, on the lower right, you see those clouds on the lower right of the satellite loop, and we'll take a closer look at that later. The Hurricane Center actually has been talking about this since yesterday and has a 60% chance that this could become a tropical or a subtropical depression in the next 24 to 48 hours. Hang on one second here. This could be interesting. Hold on, folks. Let's see. We could have a surprise in store. Hang on. Let me see if I can set this up. This is totally unplanned. Hang on there. If it is, yeah. Mr. Rayo is on Skype. So let's see if I can turn his camera on. Try calling me again, Joe. Ah. Okay, let's see. So we can get him on camera here. Hang on a second. Ah, he's going to call. Ring, ring, ring. All right. You're going to have to bear with me, folks, because I got to set this up technically so that you can actually hear his voice. And this could be a religious experience. So hang on one moment. All right. Let's see. So he's trying. Oh boy. All right. So Skype wants to use my microphone. All right. Uh-oh. There he is. Hey, can you hear me? I can't hear you. Hang on one second. All right? I got to do a few things here. This was very much a surprise to me. So hang on. I have to figure out how to bring your audio up. Talk to me.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Talk to
6,
me,
7,
Joe.
8. I'm talking to you. Can you hear me at all?
I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
I'm hearing you perfectly.
Oh, hey, now I'm hearing you. All right. So now hang on one second.
Timothy Feldman says they hear both of us.
Okay, so then they hear no interference.
So here we are.
Okay, that's good to hear. I'm going to trust Timothy here. Thanks for letting me. Thanks for letting. Listen.
Harry, I hear him.
Now I am. First of all, before you say anything, Mr. Rayo, I have to tell you something. Yeah. I am so proud of you. I am so proud that yesterday, I saw you did your live stream and your Facebook live stream, and then today you did another one. I'm like, I feel like I have accomplished something here.
Well, actually, I did Facebook yesterday, and today I tried YouTube. So they both work.
Okay. Are you using the OBS?
No, I'm not using OBS yet.
Okay.
If I had OBS, I'd bore them for an hour like you do every night.
Oh, thank you so much. And I accept the award with humility and grace. Somebody get him out of here. I can't talk over that racket. So,
I'll do that.
Oh no, don't do that.
No. Oh, all right.
Don't do that. Then you're going to be doing a public service for people who can see. So, what should we talk about? It's now it's going to take a little bit of me getting used to the fact that you're not sitting next to me. That doesn't, but that won't be a problem for long. I'll figure it out. So, what are your thoughts about the weather going forward this week across the Northeast?
Oh, we've got some ups and downs. Tonight, I don't think in the Hudson Valley that we're going to have much of a problem, at least for Orange, Westchester, Putnam, and Rockland County. I don't think there'll be any problem in terms of any frozen precipitation. As I said, we're going to be in the mid to upper 30s overnight. There'll be a bit of steady light rain up until about midnight. I think it'll peter out after about 1 or 2 o'clock. It'll be completely over with before sunrise. And then tomorrow we may get some intervals of sun in the afternoon, and temperatures will bounce back up to around 50. And then it'll cool off again on Wednesday, mid and low 40s, and we'll probably have some clouds and sun. And later on in the week, who knows, we might soar to or even above 50 or 55 before we cool down again over the weekend. Which
is about where we're supposed to be. Yeah, that's it for you. I got you on this show. You think I'm going to let you go right away?
No, of course not.
Just give me 1 second. I'm bringing up the chat on my phone. I just want.
You go to meeting.
There you go. I want to. Okay, they're telling me that your audio is way too low.
That's according to James Trumbull.
All right,
but
so
Oh, wait a minute. Now his volume is very low.
Okay, hang on. Okay, Rayo is quiet, they say. All right, let me see what I can do here. All right, stop. um, hang on. See,
Can you hear me?
Go ahead, try again.
Hello.
Testing 1, 2.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hold on, Joe. I hate that we have to do this the way we're doing it.
3, 4.
Okay, I can sort of hear you. Hold on, Joe. I hate that we have to do this the way we're doing it. I sound terrific. Okay,
I can sort of hear you. You always sound terrific. This sounds like one of those. This sounds like one of these radio shows with a 7-second delay.
Are you using a microphone?
Yes, of course I'm. No, I don't have a microphone. Everything is in the. Are you using a microphone?
Okay, because I have a separate microphone. Are you just trying to see if you could boost your audio somehow? Because I have you potted all the way up. See if you can raise your volume somehow.
Let's see.
See if you can raise your volume somehow. I'm gonna try something on my end.
Hold on.
I'm gonna try something on my end. I hear Mrs. Rayo in the background.
My speakers are all the way up, Joe. My microphone is like. Yeah,
Okay.
but she's standing over there.
I know you're coming on. Yeah, I can sort of hear you on my phone. And you are on the low side, and I've got you boosted as far up as I can do it. Just let me take one more shot here of where I can boost your audio. Let's try this. Talk to me.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Level check. 1, 2. How now, brown cow? 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2. How now, brown cow?
Yeah, you got a great echo.
1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2.
Actually, you.
Yeah, you got a great echo. Let me mute this.
Actually,
Now, can you hear me? Say something.
we're on a delay.
Hello?
Yeah, I actually can hear you a little better now. All right, you know what? Let's just before the entire audience dwindles away, let's just leave it at this. And you can obviously see that we're not the most inept. We're not the most. What's the word I'm looking for? Tech savvy people when it comes to this sort of thing. I just sort of figure it out as I go along. So, hi, Mrs. Rayo. Everybody say hi to Mrs. Rayo. Everybody on the chat board say hi to Mrs. Rayo. If you need, listen, just let me tell you, if you need an engine repaired, a washing machine rebuilt, a snowblower just, brought back to goodness, this is the woman to go to. She should be doing videos on YouTube, repair videos, because she fixes everything. You are a dream. And by the way, she made the best butter pecan cake I have ever had in my entire life, if not the best cake I've ever had in my entire life. That was insane. That was just so. That was really. If I had 10 days to live, I want that cake.
I keep that in mind.
All right. So, Mr. Rayo, what's your ideas on the longer term?
I think right now everybody is just thinking about next week, which is, of course, Getaway Day Wednesday and Thanksgiving Thursday. And from what I saw earlier, the models are kind of red flagging some kind of a disturbance moving through. The fastest of the models seems to be the Canadian. They want to bring in some showery and possibly heavy rain here during the afternoon hours of Wednesday of next week. The GFS is a little bit slower. They've got that in for the evening. And the slowest of all, the European, which still has this system languishing in our area come Thanksgiving morning. And as I mentioned on my YouTube video earlier, that sounds so strange. I was just on my YouTube video.
Well, because that's what it is. Just tell that's Joe Rayo weather, by the way.
Right, Joe Rayo weather. I said, well, we're still about 9 or 10 days out, so as we get closer, we'll have a better handle as to how this is all going to come on down. But for the moment, at least, there might be something semi-adverse in the weather department as we're approaching the holidays about the middle of next week.
Yeah, I kind of thought the same thing, and it looks like you got this split flow that's out in the west. I always liked split flows because they can be real challenges to forecasting, and they can be very exciting from the standpoint of what they could ultimately produce. In this particular instance, with all the cold air we had last week, we really don't have any cold air around, to speak of this week. But we're, the snow. Believe it or not, Joe, I saw over the weekend. It is November 18th. I saw over the weekend posts from people saying that winter was over.
Well,
What has happened? What has happened to weather humanity? May I ask?
we have dealt with this before in other previous winters where the white towel has been thrown in, the white flag has been waved, even before the winter solstice. But I suspect that there is going to be more than our fair share of active weather, if not in the immediate future, then sometime later in the winter season, as we saw last year. It takes time for this to ruminate, so to speak, in the winter weather department.
But it's only November. That's the thing that gets me. There is, if you want to look at across the country, it's November. That's the thing that's mind-boggling to me, because 9 times out of 10 in the month of November, at least in our area, it doesn't snow. And yeah, okay, you go up near the Great Lakes and places up much further north, but even in those areas, usually they don't even see their first snows on average until late November or early December anyway. Chicago saw their first 1 inch of snow before November 1st, and I went and looked it up. Their mean first snow date is something like December 7th or 8th. It's not that it is unusual for it to snow in November in most of the continental U.S. At least the first half, anyway.
Usually, I think what is our first significant or sticking or accumulating snow around these parts not until the beginning of December, early December.
Yeah, I think for New York City, what is the mean first inch is like December 11th or something, or 9th or 10th, something like that.
So settle down.
Settle down. Oh, and the new thing now is I'm reading from people telling me how when they were kids in upstate New York, where there was snow on the ground from November 1st on, and all this. And I went back and looked at some records, and I have to tell you, there were some pretty lean years that occurred in upstate New York during the 70s and 80s, and not now there was some really gangbuster years, but there's something about our memories as we get older with stuff that has made us feel good when we were kids, and I'm convinced that for most people, snow is one of those things, and therefore they suddenly remember that the wonderful feelings that those snow days when you had at school and when you were home, and maybe your mom did something special with regards to the kind of food that you might have had during snow days. I know that was the case in my house. My mother would fry pizza dough, which was usually the only time, and I loved it. Till this day, I did it for my kids. When they had their snow days, I used to get pizza dough and I would fry it up, and so you tie it with very good memories. So you want to say that it snowed for 3 months, and we ate nothing but pizza dough for 3 months.
Yeah, instead of a snow day at the Cioffi home, it was pizza dough day.
It really was. But my mom's stuck in the house. She didn't know. She might have not had time to go stock up on milk and bread, because in those days you didn't have perpetual apocalypses being predicted weeks in advance by all these insanely accurate weather people that are out there. And so my mom had, what did she have at home all the time? Flour, yeast, and of course you have water no matter what. So she'd make pizza dough. And then she would take the pizza dough and then she would fry it up in the frying pan. And it was great. And it kept you warm and it was filling. And she didn't have to worry about cooking a long hot meal because there weren't, she might have not have been able to get out. And in those days, I don't know about you, Joe, my mom didn't drive. So,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, my mom at the time did not drive a car. So she was stuck at home and that's what you did.
No, my mom would not. My mom drove, but she would not drive in anywhere near much more than a half an inch of snow on the ground. She'd look out the window and say, "That's it. I'm done. I'm not doing anything today." By the way, you want to meet my friend Bob?
Sure.
Sure, why not? Hey, Bob, come and say hello to everybody on Skype. Here you go.
Who's Bob?
This is Bob.
Hi, Bob.
You know Bob. Bob could talk too. Come on, Bob, say something. Don't tell me the battery is dead. Oh my goodness.
So is Bob.
Bob is silent. Bob does not talk anymore. But this is Bob, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to put him back on my desk here because he'll probably make some happy little trees.
So let's now that we're a few days away from this. By the way, I'd strongly suggest one of the things you should, if you can, get. I don't know if you can see it on your end from me, but I got my microphone here, and it's I got a pretty decent mic, and it really kind of helps out with the audio for sure. I'm gonna try to bring myself into the picture here so we can share airspace.
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
There you are.
I'm here. I gave you all the airspace up until now. Are you co-simulcasting me on YouTube?
I'm seeing you right. I don't know what the heck is going on here. I'm actually what I'm seeing right now is my Skype, and I'm also hooked up to your YouTube channel. So
Think about the fact you and I, for those of you who don't know, or Joe and I know each other for 40 plus years. So, basically we've known each other since we were in utero, practically. More like around the age of 19, 20. So if you do a little math, you can figure out how old we both are. And he's older. But here's the thing. This was sort of the kind of thing that in some vague sci-fi fantasy imagination that I have, as you, I'm sure, have. I know you have. Thinking back, when we in the 70s or 80s, and thinking about, wouldn't it be cool if you had your own television channel and so on. And now, you of course you've been doing it with me since we were together on FiOS, and now you're on your own. So I'm just kind of curious how you're feeling about this, because I know you were a little, you were hesitant, and I'm being kind using that word, but you were a little hesitant. Okay, you were a little, I was a little pessimistic there. So you kind of got your feet wet now. What are you thinking?
it gives me something to do now.
Well,
when Mrs. Ray was calling and wants me to do one of those honeydew missions or one of those honeydew days. Sorry, honey, I got to come down here and go on the TV.
A little Andy Griffith in there.
Yeah.
Well, we've been.
Dinner's on the table. Come home.
So, I have to tell you quite honestly, because now it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and now it's Monday. So it's been 5 days, and I have to tell you, at least from my standpoint, and I know I mentioned it. I was thinking seriously about maybe calling it quits anyway at the end of this year, because I wanted to just really explore doing my own stuff and taking it up to the next level. And this whole thing that happened with regards to FiOS and Verizon shutting us down was the push that I needed. And I have to say very honestly, the last 5 days have been great. They really have. I don't have to get on the road. I don't have to drive 130 miles. I don't have to pay $12 in tolls as a tribute to the People's Republic of the State of New York. This is a good thing. This is a really good thing for me. So I know a few people have, sent me very kind messages, and I really appreciate it. very much, saying how sorry they are, and I keep telling them back, and it's really not BS on my part. I'm not really that sorry. I'm sorry that folks are out of work and lost their jobs. Don't get me wrong, but from a personal standpoint, for me anyway, this is a good thing. This was a very good thing. It was something that I've been wanting to do for quite a while, is to be by my, to do my own thing, and that's where I'm going to be. I have no intention of going back to doing things the old way.
Well, with me, it's a little bit different. It's been weird for me to actually physically be here. I mean, when I'm on vacation, for example, I'm here, but this is not vacation anymore. And for all the people who are wondering, I am still looking around. It would not. I would not. I'll tell you what. If I could find a broadcast position, a television position, let's say for the weekends, and an occasional fill-in during the week, and the rest of the time I'm here, that's okay with me. That would fulfill a lot of things, because I knew that I was going to be retiring, in a few years anyway, and
Right.
So maybe petering out, so to speak, toward, let's say, an occasional,
But
in front of the camera stint. That's okay, and this is okay too. I'm
sure.
doing.
Well, I got the reality is, as I have discovered over the last few years doing this, I've been at this for a while. Your audience is here. We grew up. By the way, I'll finish that thought in a second. I can read everybody's chat, so if you've got questions for either of us, fire away. I think Joe can see the chat too. So if you've got questions, go ahead and fire away. And I'm being told that the sound, we both look good and sound good. So everybody can see that I'm growing a goatee, which is even better. But look, you and I, and many of the older folks in the audience, quote unquote older, can relate to the fact that we both all come from a day where you had to actually change a channel on a television by hand, okay? And the number of channels we're usually about the number that an average child can at the age of 3 or 4 can count up to. Okay, these days it might be a bit more, but at least in our day. If you're lucky you had a dozen channels in the New York area. A lot of folks that came from other markets some markets only had 3. When I got my first job in Corpus Christi, Texas, there were 3 stations and the PBS in that station. There were 4 stations altogether, and that was back in 1982. So it wasn't really that long ago. And now, of course, we live in this mega world. The bottom line is the audience is now everywhere but in the traditional places that you and I have gotten used to. And that's why I think it's a big deal to be doing, YouTube and Facebook, because that's where everybody is. That really is where everybody is.
My wife on the chat, I see, is joined in.
What's her secret? She doesn't have a secret name. Okay, she says, a goatee is not a good look for me. Renata, I have to tell you, I've got pictures. If Joe go to my personal Facebook page, there's a picture in there when I had the serial killer look. Okay. And that was, I really did look evil in that when I had my goatee, but I'm going to grow it and see what happens, only because I can.
The word was sinister.
Yes, it was pretty sinister. I was Simon Barr sinister.
Yeah.
And the master cylinder. Where's the master cylinder?
The master cylinder.
Who was the voice of?
He's probably having lunch or dinner right now with Vavoom.
Yeah.
The characters from Felix the Cat, folks.
I was never a big fan of Felix the Cat, to tell you the truth. That wasn't one of my favorite cartoons.
Professor and Rock Bottom.
Yes, I do remember that quite well.
I got to tell you something. I went to a social media. I was ordered, actually, back when I was at News 12. The whole network, everybody on the network was ordered to come to Bethpage to attend an 8-hour social media class. And this was a guy who stood up there and bored the hell out of us for 8 hours, telling us about how the internet, the social media was the coming thing, that Facebook and Twitter were going to be rapidly increasing in terms of viewership and whatever. And at the end of this class, I had a question. And here was the question. I said, we had a major was it an F1 or an F2 tornado that went across Westchester back in 2007, I believe. And I said, if I had a viewer send me a video, of spectacular video of that tornado, 5 minutes to airtime, and I only had 5 minutes to go before airtime, what do? Do I take that video and give it to my executive producer?
No.
So that we lead off with it on the air?
No.
News 12? Or do I immediately put it on my Facebook
You immediately put it on your Facebook page.
And that's what he said. And a lot of us, remember now, this is about 8 or 9 years ago, a lot of us were looking around like, what are you, crazy?
Because you have to understand, Joe, you have to understand.
We didn't get the idea back then that
All right.
Facebook would outshine regular television.
Well, and that is it's understandable that was the reaction, because that's the same reaction that the networks had back in the 80s, okay, when cable gradually took over and you started to see these local news channels pop up that, you know, their view of cable television was, well, nobody is going to watch I'm just trying to come HBO. Nobody is going to watch any one of ESPN, any one of a, because you know what? Because we're ABC, CBS, and NBC, and we really run the media world. And what happened? They were taken down. Okay, they were completely taken down, and they saw their audiences get cut in half. Now cable's in control, and what happens? The internet takes over, and you start to see, you have people that with innovation figure out that there's a way to take them down. And now what's happening? People are dropping cable services completely because, you know what? I don't need cable. I can stream. I can go to YouTube and get all, 65 channels for $20 a month or whatever it is. Or even more so, you talk to all the people that we work with. We worked with a lot of folks that were under 30. If you ask them, the vast majority of them, almost to a T, they all got rid of cable. They either got Apple TV, they got Roku, they got, they're on YouTube, they got YouTube. They have taken that audience down. So now we've cut that in half. They've cut it in half again. Someday somebody may come along and cut this stuff in half. And at that point, we will probably, have to make another jump. But right now, that's what happens. You get these behemoths. They become giants, and then they become lazy, and they think that we're the only game in town. And remember, AT&T, we don't care, we don't have to. We're the phone company. They're not a phone company anymore. They're a media company. So, look, the bottom line is that the world is different. The world has changed considerably. And it changed really fast in the last 10 years. It really did. The media world changed very fast. And there's less and less use of traditional ways of doing things. And we got to, you have to kind of, in a way, you sort of have to let it go, let that part of it go, and kind of dive into the new stuff. And what I love about it, and I've told you this from the beginning, you can do whatever you want.
Right. We don't have to worry about somebody from Verizon sending us an edict the next day after we did a broadcast saying that's not proper. We don't want you to say what you said last night.
Or maybe you should say this instead of that.
Right.
Maybe you should, maybe you should talk about this subject, and maybe you should frame your conversation to sound like you're supportive of this. This scientific concept versus that scientific. Yeah, nobody's going to tell you what to do or say. You can do it or say whatever you want. And, if someone's watching and they like it, that's fine. If not, hey, you know what? You can go to another YouTube channel.
You talk about the cable stations. The cable stations were not allowed into the Emmys. The Emmy Awards, they did not give Emmy Awards out to any of the cable stations, so the cable stations had their own award.
Right, with the Cable Ace Awards, yeah.
The Cable Ace Awards, but then...
I got one of those.
As they came to realize, hey, we got to let these guys in, and so the Cable Ace Award went bye-bye. We actually, when I was at News 12 Westchester, we actually won a couple of Cable Ace Awards, and then all of a sudden, I think it was about 97 or 98, they said, hey, guess what? We can compete now for
Now
Emmy.
head to head in the Emmys. So yeah, I have
Yeah.
I have one of those, and I have a cable ace for the Suffolk wildfires back in '93. Yeah, but now they don't exist anymore. But hey, it's nice. They're nice to get. And they're cool. They're doorstops at this point in in my life. So I'm going to be in Bayonne, New Jersey, by the way, on Wednesday, November the 20th at 7 o'clock at the Bayonne Library. You should come down if you're not busy. I know it's not the shortest drive in the world for you, but if you're not busy, you can come down and hang out.
I hate going to New Jersey though.
I'll be nice. Some of my best friends that are on my YouTube channel, okay, they're in New Jersey, so be very careful.
No, but somebody explained to me about New Jersey. When I go over the George Washington Bridge, I see these gigantic signs, on these signs. I see the Oranges, Essex, and there's like 14 different the Turnpike and Garden State Park.
Oh yeah, no.
Listen,
It's a psychotic. The same
that way, this way.
The same psychotic who designed the Brooklyn Queens Expressway is the same one, only maybe taking out another 3 or 4 levels that designed the highway system in New Jersey. I totally agree. When you look at some of those signs, I'm like, I just want to get to Bayonne. Okay.
Joe, I once got completely and totally mixed up. And if my wife is watching right now, either come back downstairs to back me up or put a message on the on the board here. I got pulled over, I think on 440, the Outer Bridge crossing. I was totally frustrated, totally confused. I was trying to find this place in New Jersey, and the cop was getting ready to write me a ticket. Now the cop must have been even younger than I was. This was when I was in my late 20s, early 30s. It was a kid, and I'm yelling at the cop. My wife is sitting there getting nervous because she thinks I'm going to get hauled out of the car and get thrown in jail. And I'm asking the cop pointedly. I said, "You explain to me about these signs. Tell me where it is going. What's happening here? Why can anybody understand?" And the cop just slowly put his book back and said, "I agree with you, sir. You try going that way. Thank you very much." And he let me go. But I was at wit's end, and I try to, nothing against all of our New Jersey viewers. I know that you're out there, but I try to avoid going through New Jersey because I don't understand New Jersey.
Yeah, I agree. I don't understand it either. Well, I've had to deal with Jersey for a while.
See, ask my wife, Renata Rea. Yes, he tells the truth.
Well, I have to one time, on was it Route 1 and 9? That I don't get. They got those double routes where it's Route 1 and Route 9. On top of that, they were doing all this construction where, allegedly it's a 2-lane road. Okay, yeah, oh sure, it's 2 lanes, all right. And I nearly split through a divider on what I thought was an exit, and it turned out to be, I was basically on a bridge. And I'm like, I'm about to go off the side. It's very difficult. I don't know how people do it. Hey, Timothy Veltman has a question here, and he says, why does it seem like the news anchors always have to get pessimistic when you guys predict snow, rain, wind, thunderstorms instead of sunshine?
Because Tim, we being Joe and I, or the weather community in general, drive the newscast. We are the ones that people tune into. It's not a newscast, it's more like a weathercast with some news on the side, especially when there's a major storm approaching. Everybody immediately turns to see what we're going to be talking about and what we think. And
so we should be paid more than the anchors.
Well, I know, Joe, I could tell you, I did 1010 Winds, the most listened to radio station in the nation. I was the morning meteorologist at 1010 Winds for 2 years, in 1994, 1995. There was a brief break of a couple of years where AccuWeather was not doing the weather on 1010 Winds for reasons which I won't even get into. But during that 2-year period, I was called in by Steve Swenson, who was at the time one of the top honchos at 1010 Winds. And he sat me down. He said, look, we are driven by bad weather. And so when we have bad weather, we're going to rely on you, and we want you to play up that bad weather to the hilt, because the worse the weather, the bigger our ratings are.
Right.
And there you go. That's your explanation. I mean, if the television station or radio station wants more viewers, and if they're smart, they lead off with the weather, and we dominate that newscast, because that's what the newscast is all about, is about the weather.
Address this from Larry Blass, who says, what's this I hear? The old Farmer's Almanac is predicting no fewer, mind you, than 7 heavy snow events this winter. How can that be?
I thought the old Farmer's Almanac was leaning again, like they did last year, to a milder than normal winter. Then again, that doesn't really mean much, because a couple of years ago we had, a day in the 60s, and the next day we had a blizzard. So I guess maybe temperatures on. I don't really know. I said some people actually physically take the Farmer's Almanac or the old Farmer's Almanac. They sit down and they actually list specifics about them, and then they tack them to the wall and then see whether or not they do occur. By the way, Joe, did you hear in Anchorage, Alaska, this past Saturday at 3 o'clock in the morning local time in Anchorage, they broke the record, the temperature record in Anchorage, 45 degrees. And then later that same day, they ended up with a record snowfall. They had 8 inches in the city proper.
Wow.
And 5 to 15 inches in the outskirts, in and around Anchorage. I've been to Anchorage. It's a beautiful city, but to have a record temperature early in the day and then have a record snowfall
later in the day,
that's weird.
Hey, we did it a couple of years ago in February, if you remember, setting all-time record highs, and the very next day being down near 20 and putting down 1.5 feet of snow. So it can be done. And that set a record too. If I recall, that Central Park got 9 inches from that, which was the most that ever happened with a temperature so high on the previous day. Something like that. We can make records out of everything. Ryan Ford, I did invite Joe to come to Bayonne, because Ryan Ford had asked about that, whether you'd come out to Bayonne on Wednesday. But if in case you change your mind, that's where I'll be at 7 o'clock.
Right.
Chuck Cardillo says,
Joe, if I'm there, I'll just detract from what will turn out to be an award-winning presentation, which I hope that
you know that's not possible. You know that you cannot possibly detract from my award-winning presentation.
But
you can only enhance it.
But you will have it on YouTube, right?
I'm going to simulcast it on YouTube. I'm going to try. I've been told that the Wi-Fi system in the library has been stepped up and improved quite nicely, and we're gonna live stream from the library on Wednesday.
By the way, if anybody here would like, I don't know what to do with maybe when we get to New Year's Eve, you're supposed to throw all your troubles away into the fireplace. But if any of you would like any of these beautiful business cards, which I have a plethora of, let me know. Send a self-addressed stamped envelope, and I'll send you one. Otherwise, I got a whole bunch of these things.
What is it?
At the fireplace come New Year's.
Joe, I'm sorry, I got distracted here for a second. What was? So I'm reading everybody's questions on the chat. What is it that you're trying to move here?
Get rid of this.
Oh, I never opened up my box of business cards.
Oh, really? Well,
yeah.
Here's my box.
Yeah, mine's sitting in the glove compartment of my car. And I never opened them up.
All right, well, there you go.
I could probably, I'll bring them as souvenirs or something. I don't know. I am.
That's great. Bring them in on Wednesday at your talk, and you can autograph each one.
Well, that's true. I'm. By the way, I'm so thrilled you did call in tonight. I was trying to figure out. I thought maybe either Thursday or Tuesday. I'm trying to catch up on a few things that I've been doing for my stuff, and the taking care of a few technical issues, and I wanted to figure out what was a good way to bring you on and make sure the audio levels were going to be right and everything else. Well, we kind of did it on the fly, and we kind of did it for everybody to see, which is okay too.
No, I did yesterday on Facebook, and then earlier today on YouTube, and I said both times that I would be connecting with you at least once or twice a week, and I tried tonight. And here
Oh,
we are.
absolutely. Well, my regular time is 7 o'clock. You always shoot me a message beforehand, and this way we'll have you up there, and we'll get it. We'll get going with doing it on a regular basis. And certainly when we got storms going on, I definitely want to have you be on together here. Isn't it nice to just be able to talk about anything you want, anytime you want, no restriction? Really is. I mean, editorially speaking, we could say and do. One of the things I'm going to be, very open about this, and I kind of said that in my post in Facebook. Honestly, the news business in television, I can't stand it. I just can't.
Can I say something? Can I say something? And this actually made a commentary on my Facebook page from some former people who were in the business. This past Saturday night, I'm not going to mention the channel, but on one of the channels, there were three guys, one gal, and all the guys were wearing like open collared shirts, no ties,
right?
And we were all asking the questions amongst ourselves, like what the heck is going on here? Because when I don't know about now, but when we were going through the business, we had to appear, presidential with a tie,
God, it was unheard of.
Like that. And now it's just like. I mean,
well,
right
suits.
now, I'm actually thinking to myself, Joe. I said to myself, should I wear a suit to my first Joe?
Yeah, no. Well, among millennials, Joe, they don't. It's a whole different world. They don't even do suits anymore. They just don't. The business suits are. You don't see. It's not even. I wouldn't call it necessarily a casual look, but they've kind of gotten.
Here was the irony. Charlie Kay, who used to work at CBS now, one of the really great newscasters, news anchors, former news director at WHN, the beloved WHN radio here in New York. And he made the commentary, and it's absolutely true. These people on the real newscasts
right.
were actually appearing with the open collar and the no ties and everything else, and looked actually, in my opinion, semi-schlumpy, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And meanwhile, later on that evening on the fake newscast on Saturday Night Live that they run at 12:15 on the show, here's the two anchors on that show dressed up, suit, tie.
Right. Well, that's
whatever. On the fake newscast they look great. On the real newscast they think they're attracting people by looking like, well, hi, we got our shirts open and the no tie.
I grew really tired. Once upon a time we did news. If you look at newscasts now in general, they are, in my opinion, and maybe you'll disagree with me with this, we'll still be friends, but they have been, they've really become like shaming vehicles. Shaming people if they're not eating, if they're eating meat, shaming people if they're eating, if they're not eating vegetables, shaming people if they're drinking too much soda or not enough of this, or I'm using that, as some examples. And I grew, as if all of the world's problems could be solved if we just exercised more and moisturized. This is the message that comes across on a nightly basis. And I grew to a point. Then, of course, you and I, we sat in an open room. We didn't have our own office. So it's this sort of open concept room. You've got all these TV monitors blaring at you from every network, including having to listen to that drivel from, CNN and all the rest of them. Then you've got the control rooms behind you. So they're producing all this other stuff. And, all I'm hearing is, well, you could save the world if we would just exercise and moisturize some more and on. And you sit through this every single day, 5 days a week for a couple of years. And being that you and I, we've been around for 40 years, I couldn't do it anymore. I mean, I just couldn't listen to it anymore. It's a very, very disheartening environment. And, your job is to basically push all this stuff along. And by the way, you're going to do it next year, but you're not getting a raise. Or you're going to do it a year, 2 years from now. The raise you didn't get last year, well, guess what? That's a pay cut this year because our audience is shrinking. and our advertising revenue is shrinking because nobody's watching cable news anymore, whatever it is.
Right.
Call me an old cynic. Maybe that's where I am now. Somebody might watch. Somebody may be watching right now from a television station. Say, I wouldn't hire that guy. And you know my response to that is, I'm not interested. Okay, so don't worry about it. You won't have to hire me because I ain't applying for it. As Andy Griffith would say, although you do a much better Andy Griffith than I do. I feel like now I'm starting to.
I really like to do that all the time. All the time. It's a good cookie. Good.
Oh, brother. God, you and I have gone a long way. So,
it's a pity, Joe, because a lot of you think about it. Disagree with me if I'm wrong. If somehow Walter Cronkite or Harry Reasoner or Chet Huntley or Howard K. Smith were suddenly to reappear and go back to their old stomping grounds and go back to reclaim their positions as
none of them
respected new anchors, there would be no way, Jose, no way in the world they would get those jobs because the packaging is wrong. They just don't look proper to appear on today's television. It doesn't matter that they're credible and they know their stuff in news. That is the way it is. They simply would not be able to get their news back. It's youth should be served. That's the concept today.
You would like that. You would love this. Netflix. Okay, there's a documentary series on there that looks at the different things that happened in the 60s and 70s, and it was a lot of the one that they did about the 70s was focused on the emergence of terrorism, skyjackings, and all and bombings that occurred through the 70s. And the thing is, they pulled out a lot of news clips from the networks, old network anchors that I forgot: Fred Francis, Bernard Kalb, Marvin Kalb, Walter Cronkite from the anchor desk, Harry Reasoner, Frank Reynolds, John Chancellor, Tom Brokaw, on and on and on. And you see, they cut whole clips out of their newscasts, and they were showing them in this documentary, and it brought back all these memories of growing up through this whole period. And I just, and I was kind of a news junkie when I was a teenager. So it reminded me of a lot of the huge political upheaval that was going on throughout the world in the late 60s and 70s, Arafat, Israel, Palestine, and all the rest of it. And the thing is, you're right. You look at those news anchors and how they delivered the news and the things that they said and some of the commentary that they did as commentary. Oh my God. You know what? Almost virtually all of those people have passed away. They're spinning in their graves. I mean, they're not just turning in their graves, they're spinning, okay? At 100 revolutions a second. That's how fast they are when they look to see what has emerged and what has become of what journalism was back in the day, because it doesn't really, in my opinion, it just doesn't exist anymore. And unfortunately for us weather people, we've been dragged into it because everything is the next apocalypse, and you try to maintain a certain a certain sense of common sense and calmness to it, and it's very, very difficult to do in the work environment. I don't know about you. I mean, I never really have been pressured by anyone to say, can you say, you have on radio, but in terms of television, I've never been pressured by anyone to say that, hey, can you play this up? Can you do this, that, maybe you should. But, you start to see hints of that now coming along.
On radio, two very quick anecdotes, two very quick stories. The first was, there was a blizzard. There was a storm that was moving up along the eastern seaboard. We had a station. I was working for a company. One of our stations was in Madawaska, Maine. That's up near Caribou, Maine.
Yes.
And I went on and I said something to the effect like, The temperatures were going to be in the 20s, the chill factor below zero, snow moderate to heavy, winds gusting to over 40 miles an hour. Stay in your homes. This could be a deadly storm. Don't go anywhere, blah, blah, blah. Within 5 minutes, the station called me back, and all the merchants in Madawaska, Maine, were calling the station up and saying, take that forecast off. It was like the week before Christmas. This is in the late 70s. How could you allow something like that to go on the air? We're going to lose all the business this final weekend before. And like he said, can you tamper it down a little bit from what you just said? Can you? I said, I'm not telling you to change the forecast, but can you make it not as dramatic as what you said? And all I did was I gave them a straight forecast, and I said at the end, if you have any travel plans this afternoon, folks, and I paused for 5 seconds, and I said, think them over. And that's how the weather ended. That was one case. The other case, and I'll never forget this was in Washington, D.C. We had a radio station. It wasn't even in Washington. It was in a suburb, but they claimed they were a Washington station in Morningside, Maryland. They had the $500,000 Budweiser Ramblin' Raft Race coming up on Saturday, the upcoming weekend. I go on the air, and I tell everybody that we've got a major storm with winds and rain and everything else, and I say it doesn't look very good for the Ramblin' Raft Race this weekend weather-wise. Well, within, again, 5 minutes, the program director called me up and said, you got to change the forecast. He didn't say tamp it down like the other station did. He said I had to change the forecast, make it sound like it was going to be great for the upcoming Saturday Budweiser Ramblin' Raft Race. And I said, I'm not going to do that. I can't do that. Where's my credibility going to go? And he said to me, and I'll never forget it, he said, this is radio, blank your credibility. He actually said that. I refused to do it. What ended up happening, Joe, is he ended up calling an old friend of yours, who was a good friend of his as well, Willard Scott.
Right.
And Willard, of course, was so happy. He said he must have gone on the air that afternoon. Well, we got the great Ramblin' Raft Race. Don't bother about the weather. It's going to be a great blah, 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 blah. And on Monday, the company I was working for received a registered letter from the radio station canceling our contract. And there you go.
Not a shock, but that's, you know what? Now they can't fire you because you got your own channel. And you now you can say whatever you want, pretty much.
Well,
you know,
that's the way of the world in radio and probably television as well.
Well, you know, radio's from the standpoint of weather now is a dead industry anyway. Nick Charles from the
a lot of people ask me, why don't you go back to radio? And I said,
there's nothing to go back to.
It's impossible. You can't go back to radio. Listen, and I challenge all of you. Listen to any radio station, save for perhaps 1010 Winds and WCBS, where our good friend Craig
in New
Allen,
York. But wherever you are around the country, it could be the same thing. Go on.
But the thing is, listen to any other radio station, and the weather goes boom, boom, boom. It's less than 30 seconds. That's
sunny today, high mid-80s, clear tonight, low mid-60s. Nick Charles
right.
In touch, you know, from the old WXLO days.
Yep.
It's the same thing,
Our
you know.
good friend Bill Corbell, who was on WXLO, not as Bill Corbell, but as Flash Flood.
Oh, no. Really?
That was his name on WXLO.
Really? I will say this. I have been asked to change my name, and I said no. It's just not happening. You know, my name is difficult to spell and difficult to pronounce, unless you're Italian, or at least at the very least, if you have a background in Spanish or Italian, Portuguese, you could look at. You could look at it. You could look at the name and how it's spelled, and you know how to pronounce it.
My wife and I, we met at the private forecasting service that we used to work at, and sometimes we would do radio stations that kind of overlapped each other. Like, for example, in Philadelphia, we had WFIL, Philly 56, but there was also a station in the same area in Norristown, Pennsylvania. You could hear both stations, but neither station wanted to have the same voice. So on WFIL, I was Joe Rayo. On the Norristown station, I was Cliff Schuster. Same voice, same forecast, different name. And my wife, you'll love this, Joe.
I'm going to tell you, your wife was Cliff Schuster.
no, but you'll love this. My wife was Renata Rayo on, Renata Meklo. We were not married yet. She was Renata Meklo on one station. If it was in the same vicinity on another station, or up in Canada, when they didn't like the name Renata Meklo, she was Barbara Hale.
Barbara Hale?
Barbara Hale.
Oh my God! Seriously?
That was her name, Barbara Hale. Which, of course, if you're a Perry Mason.
Yeah.
But that's another thing too. And
Della Street. Why didn't they call her Della Street?
Della Street. That would have been great. Back in those days, in the late 70s, they can't do this now. Radio stations and television stations can't tell you got to change your name because it's too ethnic sounding, which is basically why they told, for example, my wife Renata, you can't use that name. You got to use a different name, a more Americanized name. But try that today. There are a lot of stations in this market where there are people with names that match their ethnicities,
and here's when I started with my first TV job. I mean, I got a sense very early of what nonsense professionals in this business really are, and the fact that they will ultimately would have been got proven wrong down the road. So when I started in television, Joe, I went down south. I went to Corpus Christi, Texas, and in trying to get that first job, I was told, you're never going to be able to make it in the South because you sound too much like a New Yorker. You should change your last name because it has a vowel at the end of it. It's too ethnic. I refused to do all those things. Would not do it. I went to Corpus Christi. I was there for 2 years. Then I went to New Orleans, and which is at the time was a top 30 market, or right around 30, and was there for 3 years. When I was looking for a job to leave New Orleans, I was told that I wasn't ethnic enough and that I sounded too much like a Southerner. Go figure. At the end of the day, I kind of figured out that, look, if somebody likes you, they're going to hire you. If somebody doesn't like you, they're not going to hire you. They'll use any excuse not to hire you. It's only that they used to be far more open about the reason why they weren't hiring you at the time, which they can't do anymore because they can get sued. So they do it by hiring them, because what they do now, and this is true, they hire the person first, then they post the job, okay, so that they can say they posted the job, but they've already decided who they're going to hire anyway. So then they waste your time by putting you through some sort of phony interview process when in the end they already have made their decision. And being realist, I would say, look, tell me up front, do you have somebody hired? Because I don't want my time wasted. And no. And then in the end, it winds up being that way anyhow. I want no, like I said it from earlier on, I no longer want any part of that nonsense, and I'm happy. Chuck Cardillo is mentioning his flashbacks to WMCA, WABC, WOR, 1010 wins, news radio, 66, and all the rest of it. Yep, they're all pretty much, in some respects, those stations are all there, and in other respects, they're long gone. Would you not agree with that?
By the way, I did WABC radio, and we provided the forecast for WABC radio back in the early 80s. And one rule that we had was we could never, ever give a temperature of 66 degrees, because 66 WNBC is the absolute truth.
Well, what about an NBC? A WNBC at 66 NBC, could you not give 77 as a temperature?
I never did WNBC, so I can't tell you that.
What about at News Radio 88? Why not give 88? He can't give 88?
Oh, God. Howard Hoffman, he was the guy on ABC in the overnight hours. He had a voice something like this. And one time we actually gave him the 66, and we told him, he said, you can do anything you want with this because we're not allowed to give it to. And he actually said, hey, Joe Rayo, it's 66 and a half degrees right now. We're not allowed to say 66 on the air. He had some fun with it. But this rule came from the hierarchy at WABC Radio back in the early 80s. It was a memo. It was delivered to us. We're not allowed to use 66
That's too
on
funny.
the airwaves at WABC. Crazy. Like, that's going to change your whole attitude. That if you hear 66, oh, immediately I've got to turn to 66 WNBC because I don't, crazy.
So it is now coming up on 8:20. So we've been at it for quite a while. I've enjoyed every waking minute of it, but I think we should maybe save some of this energy for the next time around. What I would suggest, Joe, is if you could figure out, once you get figured out on OBS, the open source broadcasting, what you can do is you can simulcast this on your end on YouTube at the same time that I'm simulcasting on mine, or you could simulcast this show on Facebook rather than to YouTube. So we can do all sorts of weird things that you couldn't imagine you could do before. And most definitely, when weather is busy, we'll have you on. And I got the graphics all ready to go. So you're just going to have to bear with me switching screens from one to another. And I think the one thing I want to do is just work out the audio issue here to make it sound a bit better. But I think I got the levels up a bit from my last check. And I'm not, no one's telling me that I'm crackling on the air. So that's a good thing. But I'm so glad you called tonight. I had a feeling you might, and I had my phone by me, and I saw that the notification came across that that you somebody tried to call me on Skype, so I knew right away it was you. So I'm going to always have my phone handy here. You shoot me a message ahead of time whenever you you want to do it. Just shoot me a message, ahead of time, so this way I'll have everything ready to go from the get-go. Does that work for you?
Yeah, it's been fun. I enjoy it, and I enjoy being with our audience. And yeah, we'll be doing this more often. I can assure you of that.
And by the way, it's a rarity in this business. What actually turned out, just really fast to wrap it up, what actually turned out. In the irony of life, because a lot of things that happen in life are very strange, and I mean, to think that you and I started our careers together, and in a big way, and in television and News 12 and the innovativeness that was News 12, and you and I were part of that, and then of course somehow the paths kind of went in different directions, which life does that, and then they brought us back at what might have been the end. But you know what? It was the end of one thing, but it's the beginning of another. And this is the beginning of another, and that's where we are now. So we ain't done yet. And one day when we're just all toothless and we're sitting here at 97 years old doing weather live streams,
what'd you say, old?
Did he say snow? Huh? Did he say rain? Did he say rain or pain? Huh?
My wife just said some folks missed your weather forecast at the beginning. So let me give them a quick dose of the weather, because this is a weather feed, I guess. Tonight, cloudy with some rain. Tomorrow, the sun comes out in the afternoon. It'll be near 50 for most. Then on Wednesday, it's going to turn colder. It'll be about low to mid 40s. And the sun comes out again on Thursday. Next week is Thanksgiving Day. We might have some rain or showers either on the day before or actually on the day of. I will have more to say about that when we get through all of this.
And, give yourself a little extra time if you're driving up to Mount Pilot.
Yes.
Okay? So, you know what, folks? It's 25 after 8. I've been on for an hour and 25 minutes. There really isn't a whole lot of weather going on tonight, so I'm not going to go back and do anything with weather-wise. It's time for me and Joe to say goodnight. But thanks for being here, being part of this, and for putting up with some of the technical issues earlier. And we will, of course, as I said, we will do this again. We're going to be doing, I would say we probably at the very least should do this. We'll probably do it once a week. And when the weather gets busy, we could do it, more than once a week. I'm open to whatever you want to do, Joe. So you just let me know.
The wonderful thing about this show is that when I did when we were doing this together, I don't know about you. I would suspect because you were further away from Fios One, and it's about 45 minutes away. But I mean, to think about, let's say, a big snowstorm coming and having to drive in that the very next day, and having to work out, hotel reservations, and then wondering how we're going to get back home, and worried about our loved ones, like my wife, who may have lost power here at the home base, and I'm saying to myself, I'm here and she's over there, whatever like that, and I don't have to worry about that. There's no pressure anymore on the.
I have driven in every major snowstorm since probably 1987, except for maybe a handful. And even if you want to count the ones I didn't drive in, I still drove in probably more snowstorms than the average person has ever driven in. They're not fun. Right. And as I've gotten older, I don't have the patience for it anymore. And somehow, knock on wood, never once did I get into any kind of wreck. And I mean, I drove in some really, the blizzard of 96, on the way, during, and before it ended. So somehow, thank God, never had any kind of, wreck, or, although I did lose the 4-wheel drive on my Pathfinder in the middle of that, which was not a fun thing, but somehow I managed to get home anyway. But yeah, I'm not doing it anymore. And I noticed it even in the last couple of years, and having to drive in some of these snowfalls, I couldn't do it. I just couldn't. I was like, you know what? I'm too old for this. I'm not doing it anymore. So yeah, right. I'm going to be sitting in my chair. I'm going to have the window open, the camera outside. I'll just look when, go out there every once in a while with the snowblower and enjoy myself. And yeah, don't have to work, and that's a good thing. And you know what? No one's going to convince me to work either.
And I'm doing that. We'll probably have bigger ratings than at least Channel 11.
Yes.
What did he say?
Yeah, hello, Warren. All right, Mr. Rayo, have a great night. Actually, you know what? Don't go away. I'm just gonna. I'm gonna say good night. We'll say good night. Should we say it the way we said it on the tape that we did when we did the shot those promos, or you don't feel up to it?
I should have pre-taped it. This way we'd have background music.
All right. You know what? We'll save it for another time. All right. All right. Have a good night, Joe. I'll talk to you later in the week. Okay. And to my regular audience, thanks very much for being here, and we'll see you tomorrow. Appreciate it very much, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed bringing this to you. Good night, everybody.